Jenna.
Hey!
Hey, everyone, and welcome to the Ethan and Jenna Show. I'm your host, Ethan Micheal, and alongside me, I always want to call you Jenna Benna, but then I'm not sure if some people don't like Jenna Benna. So, because I called that to my niece. Yeah, I can't talk. Jenna Benna. Like, hey, Jenna Benna.
Like Jenna Benna? Like a just
Oh, Jenna Benna, Bo Benna, Fee, Fi, Fo, Fenna. Yes.
I can go with that.
How's it going today?
Going pretty good. It's snowing in Texas, in Austin, Texas. It's actually snowing. It's kind of cool. Very exciting.
I actually, until recently, didn't know it snowed in Austin, Texas. I thought it was like a hot area all the time.
It usually is. Yes. This is definitely not. I think I can count 2 other times I've ever seen it snow in Texas. Once I think I was like 6, and then once I was like 21 or 22.
Well, then I don't know if I want to move to Texas if it snows, because I'm trying to get away from the snow, man.
I mean, it's climate change. Everything's changing. You never know what you're going to get now. Yeah. But it's worth the warm days and the number of nice days, I think, totally outweigh the 2 or 3 days out of your lifetime that you'll see snow here.
Right. By the way, today's topic is mental health and burnout. So, what are your thoughts? Have you been burnt out before? How do you prevent yourself from getting burnt out? What do you do? Well, you can call the number on the screen and share your thoughts with us. 708-554-7836 or 708-5-LISTEN. I work a lot. But I've always been a constant like workhorse. And I know people actually warn me to be careful not to burn out. But I think I have good coping mechanisms in place to prevent burnout.
Like what?
So one is my laughter and dancing. Like when I find myself, now this doesn't work every time, but the majority of the time when I find myself getting just mentally exhausted or like I can't reply to any more messages, I'll like pull away. I'll go do a goofy dance. I'll smoke a doobie and just kind of find a way to just be like, or I'll even like
to in that moment to be able to identify that what you're feeling is almost like burnout, and that what you need to do is to go and laugh and dance, and you specifically go and do that.
Yeah. God. Well, I wouldn't say burnout. I would say exhaustion. Like if I notice like I am getting overly, okay. So I message like a lot of my life recently, it deals in chat and text messages. So I'm literally always replying. But at times I can feel like, okay, I can't keep replying to this many people. I got to step away. So I will break from it, stop replying, and I'll go do something to try and make myself laugh or chill out and relax. Do you think that's a healthy or unhealthy coping mechanism?
I think that it depends on if there's actually like if there's a problem there that you're running away from by just going and dissociating and, hiding by trying to entertain yourself for the time being, or if it actually is just exhaustion and you just need a break. And so it sounds, just based off of kind of your work that I've seen, it seems like you do have a pretty good handle on it. Like you're pretty good at gauging what it is that you need. I'm still really bad at that. And so I mean, it's kind of interesting because there was a time in my life before I became an atheist where I was just so confused. I was like, how do you tell the difference between when you're exhausted, when you're depressed, and when you're just being lazy? How can you tell the difference? And I was like, I just can't figure it out. Like I feel like I'm being lazy all the time, but I could be exhausted, but I could be just depressed. I just can't tell the difference. And the more that I started learning about those 3 concepts, the more I realized that lazy is not a thing at all. That's a word that other people put on you when you're not meeting their expectations.
But what if I refer to myself as I'm like, yeah, I'm just I'm having a lazy day, or I'm being lazy? You don't think that's a thing?
I think that what you're actually doing is taking a break. You may not identify it as such.
Because saying lazy has a negative connotation to it. Ah,
We're
see,
really good at that.
Yes. That there are so many little things like that I wouldn't have thought of. That's a good point. So I'm going to stop saying I'm having a lazy day, and I'll start saying I am having a
break,
day,
day off.
okay? A
Yeah,
chill day.
day to myself.
Let's smoke some weed and laugh day. Those are some of my favorites. When I like, it'll be at night, and I'll be like, I'm just going to get really high right now, because when I'm really high, I make myself laugh even way more. Like, I'll just be sitting here and I'll just be like giggling nonstop. And it's so relaxing, and it really relieves so much stress. And that's, again, why I also recommend people find ways to laugh, especially at themselves. If you laugh at yourself, man, it can make things a little bit easier.
So this is why I try to surround my people. I try to surround myself with people that are different from me, but people that I can learn from, that I want to be more like. And I love talking to you about this kind of thing, because you remind me that I don't dedicate enough time in my life to actually seek out and find humor. I take a lot of time to de-stress. I take a lot of time to meditate and clear my head and relax and exercise and all those things. But I don't set aside time for laughter. Mostly because it's hard. We mentioned in one of our humor episodes that it's hard for me. I don't laugh at everything that most people do. So it's hard for me to find things sometimes, but there are things like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is a really good go-to. There's some comedians. Jim Jeffrey is a really good atheist comedian. So there's certain people I should go to, but I don't dedicate enough time to it. So I really appreciate people like you bringing this up and saying that you actually specifically go to laugh. That's just never would have even occurred to me.
Yeah, I think it's really important to your mental health. I mean, think about it. Do you remember that stream you did? Like, you did a couple Twitch streams, but there was one with you, Kenneth, Leonard, Best Name, and a couple other people, and you were just in hysterics laughing. Think about how good you felt, or how stressed, like how much relief you had felt after that episode.
Yeah.
And that's to me why it's so important. I mean, laughter played a role in me coming back from, sorry, trigger warning, suicidal ideation. It was a moment of something ridiculous where I was like, wow, this would only happen to me. And I start laughing. And I remember that moment so well, Jenna. It was like, I laughed and I was like, like I took this big breath, because all of a sudden I was like, holy shit, that weight, it just lifted. Like, it just took like 50 pounds off me, and my mood just went, and anxiety started dissipating. And it just changed everything. So I would definitely implore everybody, find a way every day to make yourself laugh.
You just connected some dots for me, because something that I learned just in passing was that the same chemical that is released when you cry, that releases stress and makes you feel better, is released when you laugh. And it's also the same one as when you run and get that runner's high or that exercise high. It's the same kind of chemical. I think it's oxytocin and probably another like hormone. But I just know it's the same one. And I'm very good at crying. I'm very good at making myself cry, finding things to cry about, finding time to go be alone and let myself cry. So if I probably traded that out for some laughter, that can make a difference.
It can. It's so, I don't know. I just can't recommend it enough. I just find in my own personal experience that the more I can find a way to laugh, it helps me let go of stress. Or if I say I'm arguing with someone and I'm like, in my brain, I'm getting heated. Well, what I try and do is, okay, I try and find like the ridiculousness of the argument, or like, oh, this is stupid, it's Facebook. Like I try and let go of the situation, because focusing so much on it can really be consuming. And that's the problem with anxiety, is you can't choose not to have anxiety. When it's happening to you, it's just happening. There's no way to be like, hey, I don't want to feel this right now. And as you have it, it can get worse, because then you're anxious about being anxious. everything's piling up. So rather than focusing on trying not to be anxious, I'll try and focus on what can take away that anxiety. And for me, it's laughter.
I'm going to bring something up right so we can get to our caller right after this. Something that one of my best friends, I just talked to her about this point, and she said that it really helped make some things clear for her. And I think that this can apply to what we're talking about right now, about the laughter, about work, about burnout, about all of it. But it's about pretty much acceptance. So if you and I are in a room and we're facing each other, right? And I am a big problem that you have to get around, you have to get past me to get to where you want to go, right? Okay.
Yep.
What is the best way to get to your goal and get through me? Like when, for example, like just push past me, break me down, try to find an obstacle, around me. What is it?
I'm trying to think of how to answer that. Are you asking like what would be the best way to like, okay, so say you're saying you're the stress in my way, and you look at it as a way of what can I do to get past that stress?
Mm-hmm. What can you do to get to your goal, which I am in between you and it? And I am a problem, some obstacle, some error or something.
So I guess it depends on the type of problem, because on one end, when I have like, it really depends on the issue, and I don't want to paint this with a broad brush, but there are certain obstacles in my life, or if somebody gets in my way, or somebody gets in the way for my happiness, for instance, I'm going right through them. And
not a person.
Sorry, no. I'm going right through the object that is trying to prevent me from being happy in almost every scenario.
So are you destroying it?
No, I guess it really depends. On some instances, yes, I am destroying it, but on other, I'd like to bring up Puck's point. Where he says, Ethan and I are very different. My way of dealing with being overwhelmed is to deal with things that are overwhelming to me. So this is where there is a downfall to some of my methodology. There are times where there are serious issues that I need to be like, hey, I need to deal with this now. And instead, I'll be like, I don't want to think about it. I need to get out of this, and I'll avoid it. It's not common, but it happens. So I would say it really depends on the type of problem.
I would agree. So when you decide that that's where you actually want to go, you get past me.
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question, Jenna.
I couldn't answer it either. I could not figure it out for the life of me. And then the professor that I was learning from said, basically, essentially, metaphorically, what you would do is you just come up and just hook arms with me and walk with me to the finish line. You would accept that I am there and that I'm going to be there, and say, okay, well, you know what? This will be a lot easier if we try to work together. Let's hook arms, hold hands, whatever, and go over there, because I'm not going anywhere. And the more you try to fight me, the more I'm going to fight you.
So is that another way of saying like embrace the problem?
That means accept whatever is, because the more time that you spend trying to fight it, the less time that you have to work with it or work around it. And it just creates anxiety. It just, what was it? There was some superhero on one of the Marvel movies that was like, what was it? What's the point of worrying? Because oh no, it's this Fantastic Beasts. Eddie Redmayne, I think, says this. He says, you just suffer twice.
You suffer twice from what?
From worrying.
Oh, how so?
Because if you worry about something happening and then it happens, you worried about it and then it happens. So you suffer twice.
Okay, that's an interesting point, because there are times where I'll sit here worrying and stressing about something before it happens. But it's how do you prevent that, or how do you stop from worrying about something that hasn't happened yet? Like,
so for example, so there's something that's going to happen and make my life just unbearable, it seems to me. what I can do is I can stop worrying about it happening, instead start planning around it. Say, okay, well, if it happens, what can I do to make it better? What can I do to make it easier, to make it less shitty,
Right.
Accept it if it's going to happen and work around it, rather than just sit there and cry and worry and, oh, but what if it does? Well, then it does.
So here's where this is actually an issue I struggle with. So Band-Aid is only 5 years old,
Mhm.
but yet I'd say at least once a day my head will go to, oh my God, one day he's going to die. What am I going to do without him? And I, like, when this happened to so when my former partner and I had Sage. Sage was like my former partner's like best friend. Like, when she had her period, he would go and knead her stomach with his paws. Like,
Oh.
he was just, if she cried, he would lick away her tears like that. And he was also really jealous over me. Like, when I would get home at night, the second I would open the door, he would dart upstairs. And when he would see me come in the room, he would lay in between me and her and just look at me like this. But before I get too off track, I want to talk about one of the cutest things he ever did. He started to imitate or emulate me. So one day I was massaging her head because she had a migraine, and I just see him just staring at me. Like, well, later that night, I come in the room and here's Sage with his hands on her forehead, exactly in the spot I was, just laying there purring. It was like,
Oh.
oh, that is so cute. He's literally competing with me for his mom's love and also trying very hard to make her happy. My point of this was, I was terrified of the day he would pass. 10 years before it happened, I'd be like, I don't want Lori to ever lose him. This is horrible. This can't happen. So how do we stop? Like, how do I stop worrying about the day Band-Aid's going to pass?
When you start worrying about it, just start appreciating the time that you have, because that's literally all the time that you have.
Right.
Because that cat could literally die tomorrow. And if all you did during the entire time that you had him was worry about him going, then it's almost like you never had him.
That's true. And I've tried to like do that a little bit more. Like, for instance, like if I'm on my phone and I see him like trying to get my attention, I'm like forcing myself, put down the phone.
Yeah.
Don't pet him with one hand, pet him with both hands, acknowledge him.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was so happy. So for those that don't know, quick background on Band-Aid, he was a very aggressive jerk and was not very loving. It was only in the past couple months that he started laying with me at night. Well, for the first time the other day, he came and just sat on my lap purring. And that's never happened before. He's just like, I'm like, oh my God, like he's becoming more and more loving. Like, I've always wanted him to be a loving cat, and he's finally becoming a loving cat.
Cats are way smarter than I think people give them credit for. We need to do another mental health in cats episode.
Yes. Like, Band-Aid has officially banned dogs from my room. The other day, I come in again, he gets right at the line and he just sits there. And when the dog tries to go forward, he's like swatting, like, get out of here. He's so protective over me now.
Lately, my cat's been glued to one of the boxes that it's got a stroller that a friend sent us. And so he's like glued to this cardboard box and he just won't leave it. And I'm actually, he's showing some signs of senility. So it's actually like funny. It's interesting you bring it up, because that's on my mind lately. Is we're about to go through the stress of moving, and he has moved with me 7 times in a year before, and that was the most miserable time of his life. That he got really bad dandruff. It was a really bad time for him, and so I'm really worried about it. But at the same time, I realize I've had him for like 10 years. I mean, and I've had a really good time with him, and he's grown with me, and we've gotten closer together. And it's really cool to watch that kind of thing happen and just appreciate that I've had that with him.
Yeah.
But we've only got a half hour left today because why? Because
I'm going to be co-hosting Talk Heathen with Eric Murphy, and I'm freaking out, man.
Link in the description.
Oh yeah. But before we get to our caller, I want to actually address Larry's question. thoughts on Jacko Willick, sorry if I'm saying his name wrong, and his advice to go through the motion and get things done when you don't feel like it and to procrastinate on the rest. What are your thoughts on that, Jenna?
I think that depends on the situation. It depends on what the goal is and how important it is. Like if it's one of those, like for example, my goal for the basically up before I became an atheist was to just find happiness, and I was going to find it wherever the hell I could. Like I was set on it, and I was going to rest later, and I did, and I found it, and I'm very glad that I did that. But now I'm exhausted. I have found that I thought that I was a very lazy person, but I've been exhausting myself and not resting enough. And so now I'm kind of going through like this extra restful period where I'm kind of like trying to make up for lost rest, so that I can kind of gather enough energy and try to develop some kind of a rhythm that includes rest so that I can keep going without burning out. So I agree to an extent.
Yeah, I would say I agree with that as well. Okay, let's jump in to our first caller. Sweet, and I didn't say all right that time. Allison, you're on with Ethan and Jenna. What's going on?
Hey, how are you doing?
Good.
Hi,
How
Allison.
Good. I'm feeling actually really good today, which is a bonus. So we're talking about burnout today.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I totally understand burnout, and I've suffered from physical burnout for like the majority of my life. And it turns out that it's mostly because of the nonverbal learning disability that I have, which is a right brain hemisphere impairment. And also I have ADHD. So like,
do you mind if I ask what the right brain impairment is? Like, you know, if it's a specific thing, you don't have to tell me. I'm just curious to know more.
Absolutely. So let me just scroll back up here. I have a huge article that I refer to all the time. Nonverbal learning disorders, also called right hemisphere learning disorders, it reveals itself in an impaired abilities to organize the visual spatial field, adapt to new or novel situations, and or accurately read nonverbal signals and cues. It appears to be the reverse syndrome of dyslexia. Production speed is reduced because we have to take more time like processing things. So there's it is known that nonverbal learning disabilities involve the performance processes generally thought as neurological as originating in the right cerebral hemisphere of the brain, which specializes in nonverbal processing. So it's confirmation of mild abnormalities in the right cerebral hemisphere. And so, sorry,
okay.
this article is very robust, so I'm just trying to summarize it.
Is this like a self-diagnosed type thing, or is this in the DSM?
No, it's not in the DSM, and it should be in the DSM. What I did to get diagnosed with this was I actually went for a psychoeducational assessment, and I went through 3 days of testing and talking with a psychologist, and that's how I got diagnosed with it. Prior to that, I was diagnosed with ADHD and depression, and the nonverbal learning disorder wasn't even known or considered or nothing. And I'm pretty sure that I was born with it, but I was only diagnosed in 2016.
Yeah, sorry to detract from your story. I mean, I'm not trying to question your diagnosis or anything. I was just curious about it. But But you were bringing it up for a reason, though. That you said the right brain learning impairment and ADHD, and I had cut you off. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So what happens is that it really affects the motor coordination, and so it's like pretty much the right part of the brain is responsible for like your motor coordination, like keeping you standing up straight, right? So because of this impairment, the left side of the brain literally has to memorize posture and like body movements and functions just to stand up straight. So it looks like, it's like the brain and body have to work like way, way harder and produces way more exertion to do what people who don't have this disability do. So like say, I don't know, say like I run a race with like Ethan, right? And like I'm gonna be way slower and I'm gonna feel way more exhausted at the end of the race. Because my brain has to work extra hard to function properly, so I'm not just toppling over and trying to run.
To bring this back around to burnout, how does this impact you? Or how does this relate to mental health and burning out?
Well, I don't want to speak for you, Allison, but it sounds like you're saying it's almost like a chronic fatigue thing, right? Like it makes you burn out all the time.
Yeah, it's like, and I never knew why. And so like I would do, like when I was working an 8-hour shift at say Subway, and I had to work twice as hard to move, to keep up with my other coworkers. And then after an 8-hour shift, I was absolutely exhausted. And then I would sleep for like 14 hours and then not be able, and then miss my shift for the next day or whatever because I would sleep for like 18 hours. And then I couldn't figure out why, because it's like, what the heck? But because I have to work 4 times as hard as somebody who doesn't have this disorder. So it's like I was chronically burnt out all the time. And
yeah, that sounds exhausting.
It is exhausting. And then being called lazy and
oh yeah, I bet.
I don't like to be told what to do and all of that shit and blah blah blah. It was just like so invalidating and so like it affects the self-esteem so bad. Like, and not knowing why I couldn't keep up and keep a job, and why I was making all these mistakes and everything, because it's not just the physical problem. Like there's visual, spatial problems. So it's like, and then there's social problems as well, like not being able to figure out the nonverbal communication of people. Like, so Ethan, I know you were saying that you prefer to talk face to face with people on the, like, instead of on the phone, right? I'm the opposite, because like if I'm just talking to someone on the phone, the only thing I have to focus on is the tone of voice, and to figure out the tone of voice, and if the person is into the conversation or whatever. So I got really good at figuring out tones of voices and stuff, and like basic body language and stuff I'm pretty good because I memorized it. But like trying to figure out like someone when they have the neutral face, it's just aggravating, because I'm like, okay, does this person even want me to be talking with them, or do they actually like me, or do they want to hang out with me, or are they just putting up with me because they feel sorry for me? Like, I
Right.
think that in social situations all the time, and it's exhausting.
Right.
So what do you do to manage your day, to have a job, to live life? What do you do that other people don't have to do?
I actually was able to get on the government assistance
Okay,
program.
that's good.
So yeah, yeah, I got on in 2016, and it like that reduced my stress and anxiety a lot.
Yeah, I bet.
A lot. So, because before that, it was like, oh my God, like I spent so much time, being hesitant to find another job because I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to screw this one up too. And I didn't want to hurt and affect anybody else. Right.
Right.
So the biggest thing was getting that educational assessment done to figure out, and like the testing is extremely thorough. So Jenna, before you were saying that you suspect that you may have autism, or you're on the spectrum. I strongly suggest that you get a psychoeducational assessment done, because like there's a vast variety of tests that you take that will spot autism if you have it, or you might, like, I don't know what you have, but it really is accurate in determining any kind of problems that you have, or like neurological disorders, personality disorders.
Sure.
Like, I have a list of disorders, and like another big one that I didn't even know I had, and I had dismissed because I didn't do some of the symptoms. But it's like with these disorders, it's like you only need a certain amount of symptoms to qualify. It's like you don't have to have all of them.
Okay.
So
maybe we could probably continue talking about this specific test on our own, if you don't mind, just because we're trying to keep this a little bit closer to the topic. But I wanted to validate you and just kind of say that and I'm sorry that you've had a rough time with being called lazy, with being accused of not working hard enough or not trying or whatever it is that you've been accused of. But there was an article that I heard on NPR, I think yesterday or the day before. I think it was yesterday, and I'm trying to remember what the term is that they used, but it was something like retro, it starts with an R, and then affirmation error or something. Reinforcement affirmation error might be it. But what it was basically kind of about what you're going through, Allison. Kind of like, if I'm going to go to work and work all day, I know what's going on. I know what I had to do last night that kept me up all night. I know what, has me extra tired. And I have all of these reasons that justify it in my head that make it okay. But then if somebody else comes and they say that they're tired or whatever, then I'm like, oh, well, you're just not working hard enough, or you're not trying hard enough, or you're just, and I see the worst in other people because I can't see those reasons that I have, and I can't understand that they may have reasons that I don't know about. And so I think that that's what it's called.
I'm trying to find it. I can't find it right now.
But reinforcement. Affirmation error. Positive reinforcement, preserving it. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look for it, but it was something like that. And I just remember that the acronym was like RAE or something. But anyway, but it was about trying to be able to do that for other people, because the fact is that you never know what other people are going through.
Right.
You are not, no matter how much you may think you know about another person's life because you recognize this and you recognize that. Remind yourself it's the Dunning-Kruger effect. It feels like you know everything about them because you're inclined to relate to people. You know, we are people.
Right.
We want to feel included. We want to feel like we belong. And so you're going to see the things that stand out about them that you relate to. It's harder to see everything that you don't know about, and especially the things that they don't want you to know about.
That's true. We all have our secrets.
Oh yeah.
So,
Like
yeah.
Allison,
I never told my boss when I,
sorry, Allison.
I kept so many.
Sorry, Allison Love. I'm so sorry to cut you off, but we have a couple other callers that we really wanted to get to, and we do have to go in 10 minutes this time. Just maybe please call back.
Thank you, Allison.
Okay, Jenna, drop me your. Where do you want me to DM you?
I'll drop my Facebook link in the chat.
Okay. Okay, and I'll DM you and we can talk more about it.
Yes, ma'am.
Listen, I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks, you too, guys.
Okay, before we get to our next caller, I want to talk about just a few signs of burnout. Would be exhaustion, isolation, escape fantasies, irritability, frequent illness. And definitely that illness hit, like when I was more stressed and more burnt out, I was getting sick all the time. So I relate to that. But let's get
your body can physically break down if you're not listening to it. Your body can say, okay, well, if you're not going to let us rest by choice, we're going to physically force you to get in that bed and recover.
Yeah. And it can be debilitating. But in the meantime, Kenneth, you're on with Ethan and Jenna.
Hi, Kenneth.
Hey, guys. Hello. I know that you guys don't have a lot of time because we got to get to phase 2 of Ethan Micheal Fest happening all day today, which everyone's excited about. So it's funny because I was like, I'm not going to call in this week because I call in too much already. But when you guys started talking about laziness, I just had all of these like very emotional, like all these feelings bubbling up about it. And especially with something that Allison was saying on the last call, there's no correlation necessarily between someone's effort and someone's output, or someone's mindset and their output. It's just not a useful tool if you're looking at like what someone's getting done to make judgments about their abilities or their mindset, because like you guys said, everybody's coming from a different level of ability. So that's
some people don't try at all and make it through these things because it's just easy, and some people are trying so hard at everything they do and they just can't seem to catch a break. So yeah
and then just with burnout, I just wanted to tell you guys in my experience where the distinction was between laziness and burnout. I think laziness is totally a thing. I do. And so this morning I'm sitting on my couch and I've got my cup of coffee and I've got my dog and I'm covered in blankets and I'm watching TV and I didn't feel like getting up and doing anything. And it purely boiled down to it's more comfortable being on the couch than it is to be up and doing things. So I look at laziness as just this question of motivation. I don't think that there's any like moral judgment to be made about me because keeping myself on the couch seemed like it would feel nicer than getting up and doing things. But I just think laziness is a good word to use for describing that state of mind.
Do you think that we have any control over our levels of motivation?
No. I mean, because I'm a determinist, I argue hard against, notions of like libertarian free will. So I think that we can't choose to want the things that we want in any like meaningful sense. But that's a whole other rabbit trail that we just kind of had to get down. But Yeah, and I think the problem is when we start to assign moral judgments, saying that like a person is, bad because they don't feel like getting up and doing something. I don't think that I mean, laziness is historically treated as like a vice, but I think that's a mistake. There's like a knee-jerk reaction to be like, oh, that person doesn't feel like getting up and doing work or whatever, so they're a bad person. I think that's wrong.
So you think that lazy is a thing, it's just not necessarily negative?
I mean, I think it's dependent on goals and the individual person's values. If your lack of motivation with respect to doing X is inconsistent with your values and your goals, then it's a problem for you. But I don't think it's anybody else's place to look at you and go, oh, Kenneth doesn't feel like getting up and going to the gym because he's comfortable on his couch, so he's a piece of shit. Like that's a mistake. That's making a huge leap.
Where would you draw the line, or where do you think the distinction is between being lazy and relaxing? Or are they the same thing?
Again, it's goals.
Do you ever sit on your couch and drink coffee?
What's that?
Do you ever sit on your couch and drink coffee?
Yeah, I did it this morning for like an hour. I was watching, morning news programs and just, petting my dog, and it was great. And I mean, rest is essential.
Yes.
And I think that relaxing is essential. I mean, self-care it's the thing that allows us to keep going when we need to.
Mm-hmm.
So when we cross the line from necessary self-care to inaction because of a lack of motivation, I think that's where I would draw the line.
Okay.
But I'm not how do I know? I'm just talking about my own experience.
Well, so I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm just saying I've been thinking about this lately, and there was another NPR, I guess it was an article I listened to on the radio where this guy was talking. He was a sleep expert and was doing research and finding out that we have. No. This was on Great Courses. This is a course, so this isn't even just like one article. But it was about basically adults need on average between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. I have found that I'm one of those people that needs more than 8. I need closer to 9 hours to function properly. And
really?
Yes. So if you don't get that amount that you need to function properly consistently, it adds up. So say that there's that one day that you're just on the couch and you should be going to the gym and you just feel like you're just being this lazy piece of crap, and it's you doing it to yourself, and it's you identifying yourself that way because you lack of motivation. But what if that lack of motivation is coming from that collective 5 minutes that you haven't gotten for the past 10 years of your life, or the,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, what if that's just your body just making you catch up?
I mean, it definitely comes from somewhere,
Right.
I think that this is just one more reason why mindfulness is so important, taking stock of where you are,
Right.
and paying attention to, how what you do affects how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Sleep is such a huge thing. When you were saying that, I was reminded of, I'm a big fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and
he's good at those motivational speeches.
He did it. I mean, yeah, he did a speech one time where he talked about how when he first came to America and he was, a bodybuilder and he was working out, all these hours, and then he would work another like 8 hours a day. And then at night he was going to community college in Santa Monica and working toward his degree. And he was only getting like 4 hours of sleep. And he would talk to people and they would say, well, I need more than that. And he said that what he used to tell people was just try sleeping faster. And I think that I love Arnold, but I think that's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Faster?
Didn't work like that.
Yeah, he'd be like, come on, you have to sleep faster. Get up early and do your things. Come on. And like, there's we've learned a lot in the last, 25, 30 years
Right.
about the necessity of self-care. And I in my own life, the distinction has always come down to between like laziness and the need for rest and burnout. As I look at what I'm able to do and how I feel, if I am working really hard and my output is going down and my mood is getting worse and worse, and I'm becoming a bigger and bigger, asshole to be around, burnout is there. It's imminent, if not already happening.
Right.
So it's like if I'm giving my best effort and I am seeing diminishing returns, in my experience, that's burnout. But if I am not giving my best efforts and I'm finding myself spending more and more time, hanging out on my Xbox, I think I might be, maybe not, maybe not at all. Maybe laziness is creeping in.
I just don't know that not giving your best is a thing. I don't think that you have a choice but to give your best, because that's what you end up doing. I don't think that you're capable of doing better than you do.
I think I disagree with that, because
I'm a determinist.
There are things I put in more effort to versus things I put less effort into. And with my atheist channel, I am doing my best with the time I have available. However, I know that if such a time comes where I can do this full time, if you think I'm doing a lot of content now, just wait until I don't have a full-time job. More.
I don't mean producing as much as you possibly could.
Yeah, you mean doing
performing at your best.
Yeah, this is again where I would disagree, because there's times where, like, for instance, in the DJ industry, where I would be putting out my best, and then other times where I'm just like, the old joke is looking off screen for your paycheck, where it was just like, I don't really want to be here. I don't want to do this, but I'll do it fine.
That was, you were still doing your best. You were still there. You were still doing it. You were still doing your best, but there was something on your mind, something distracting you, something keeping you from performing at the potential that you could have performed or had performed before. But you don't get to decide what days you're going to do that. You don't get to decide why you're going to be like that. That's not something that you actively think out. I'm a determinist. I genuinely believe that everything that I do is literally all that I can do. And that's significantly helped me in beating myself up, because I've been really good at shaming myself and making myself feel like I'm not good enough, when in fact, everything that I'm doing, I'm doing what I can because I'm doing it. I can't do better than I do.
Go ahead, Kenneth.
We do have to go quickly, though.
My initial thought, so my initial thought was that I don't think that I have any idea what my best is. I think that that's a space to constantly be exploring. And I think that I see Jenna's point, and I think it's a good one. It's one that's worth definitely thinking about with regard to determinism. I just think that, coming from a place of shame is definitely toxic. Coming from a place of I'm not doing my best, so there's some judgment to be made about me as a person, that's toxic, and that will hold someone back from being able to reach their potential. But I think that this is why framing is so important. That if we find ourselves, and again, I'm just speaking from my own experience, when I find myself thinking about this in terms of like, what can I do? Where can I find ways to be improving? Where can I find ways to be further defining for myself and in light of my own goals what my best is? That just feels like a very healthy place. And so, comparing ourselves to others is always a mistake. There's this great quote that I love from Theodore Roosevelt, that comparison is the thief of joy. There's, ways to go about this from a mental state where you do burn yourself out and it is toxic. But I think that there's some value in just thinking of our personal bests as being undefined and potentially way beyond where we think that we are.
So I think the potential is permanently undefined.
Real quick, sorry to cut off this great conversation.
I'm sorry too.
We actually do.
I'm going to run away.
So, Kenneth, as always, it's a pleasure talking to you. And we'll talk to you
I've said
again
too much.
We're gonna have to do a mental health and doing your best episode.
All right. Thanks,
See you guys.
Kenneth.
Thanks, Kenneth.
All right. So we're going to take IQ real quick, as long as we can keep it under 2 minutes. IQ, is it possible for you to say what you want to say in under 2 minutes?
Dang it. I hate this IQ. I'm sorry.
All right. 2 minutes, because then I got to literally fly.
Look.
Look.
It is a sign of trying to be an adult where you had just got it all wrong. Look, a baby starts crying, gets frustrated. It's okay. You need a nap. And we give the baby the nap. Boom. Baby's good. We get to be an adult and think that we're no longer babies. Of course, we have grown up, gotten bigger. We've taken on responsibilities and always handle your business. But that baby is still in there. We just started lying to ourselves. That lying to yourself is not part of being an adult. Right. You need a nap. You're frustrated because you're tired. You've taken on too much. You get these warning signs of frustration, of being overwhelmed, and you have too much, and you need to be able to just let it go. Break off and drop everything and just walk away, because your health is more important. You need to be able to take not just a physical lay down in the afternoon and take a nap real quick, mental naps, breaks from social media.
That's true.
Walk away from a conversation. Take something that you are frustrated that you're working on that's too meticulous, and just set it down, walk away, go eat some lunch. You need to be able to take naps in your life, or you will burn yourself out. It's just putting too much on yourself, and you will get physical warning signs. So listen to yourself. Take those physical and mental naps. And it's not always just going to sleep physically, because I run on 4 or 5 hours of sleep a day.
Same.
5, it's usually about 5. And I function great, and I can work 16-hour days, but it's not, I'm not roofing, I do that for about 4 or 5 hours a day, and then I'm done. I can hurry up, get a lot of work done, and then I can have some downtime. It's having that rest, being able to back away, sit down, collect yourself, fuck around on social media for a minute, just whatever it is you got to do. It's being able to know yourself, know your limits, because everybody's different. There's no equation that says, this is the burnout point. This is too much work. And you'd be surprised what you're capable of with the right motivation.
Well, but we do have some basic needs that we have found, like rest, like eating green food, drinking water, exercising, interacting with people that you care about. There are some basic needs that we tend to deny ourselves because we get so busy chasing all the extra stuff.
Yeah. To touch on real quick, laziness, it's that there's a point where if you've got a certain amount of business that needs to happen and you're not getting the warning signs of being overwhelmed and you are choosing to sit down instead, it feels great to sit back, lay down, and do nothing. It feels great. And I'm going to bring in a word here that's going to tie it all together. Addiction. It needs to happen. Feels good. Eating, sex, everything that releases dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine in your brain. These are all things that you can become addicted to. And if you are choosing that comfort over handling your business, that is the point of laziness. And it's not so much about, there's no... People,
sometimes you need a little comfort, and sometimes you've been denying yourself comfort too long.
Stuff like that. There's a lot of different other issues that can result in, an extreme amount of lethargy. But
unfortunately, IQ, we do have to go.
We're all denying ourselves of this. All right, I think I've hit my 2 minutes at least probably a couple minutes ago.
Thank you so much,
I'm
IQ.
shut up, and that's all I had to say. Lock it out on Talk Heathen, because you're fit for that job, man. You're gonna do great.
Thanks,
You're
IQ.
gonna bring a lot of good shit to the table, man.
Awesome.
Congratulations.
Getting nervous. Thank you, IQ.
And for everyone watching, I apologize if I wasn't talking as much, but I was trying to not let this go longer than it already has. I really have to jet out of here. Jenna, in real quick, what do you got going on this week?
Just the usual. Check it out. And if Best Name wouldn't mind sharing my link tree again, then that can help anyone who doesn't know. Thank you. I love you.
And for the rest of you, if you're going to watch, I'll see you in 1 hour on Talk Heathen. And I don't have time to promote the rest of the stuff. But, oh my God, I almost didn't thank our patrons. One second. No, come on. Okay.
Great episode.
Our patrons, Kenneth, Leonard, Expresso Cat, and Doanya. If you like what we're doing, consider becoming a patron for as low as $1 a month. We'll be doing Patreon differently, as we are looking to give a portion of it back to the community and donate it to Recovering from Religion. Thank you. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and we'll see you in an hour. Goodbye, Jenna Belk.
Bye.